Hey everyone, Dan here. Before we get started, I have some news. Recently, I received my first YouTube strike, so to avoid any further discrepancies and to avoid the ban hammer, my videos won't contain as much manga as they used to. And look, I know that this is a crappy situation, and I know some of you guys enough that there are going to be a nice amount of people that are genuinely upset that I received the strike. But look, I'm going to tell you guys this right now. If I disappear, I will come back. There's not a doubt in my mind that Dan Exclaims will close. There's no keeping this YouTube vigilante down. With that being said, these events have just caused me to accelerate something that I had hoped to roll out in 2021. So with my first viewer's choice video, I'll unveil, well, you know what? I'm not going to say anything. You'll see. But if you want to be a part of the next viewer's choice video, join my channel memberships and cast your vote. Anywho, today's viewer choice video is a theory that I've said on multiple streams and mentioned in passing in other videos. Now, if you're not caught up in My Hero Academia, I suggest you back out now because the title might be misleading or kind of spoilery, but my theory is really spoilery, and if it does pan out to be true, it'll be one of the biggest anime-only spoilers out there. So if you are an anime only, turn this video off now, and if you're sticking around, here we go. My theory is that I think it's possible for the fourth user of One For All to still be alive. So subscribe and hit that notification bell, and let's grab a drink and talk about probably my most outlandish theory on the channel, besides, Compass Kid being alive.
Okay, 3, 2, 1, let's go.
Alright, what's going on everyone? Welcome to the bar. That's right, OCAMV helped Dan Exclaims become a fully imagined bar. May I offer you some Spy-X drink? Or perhaps some Black Curse? Maybe Vocal Pineapple Tequila for the occasion? Look, either way, big shoutouts to everyone who's been involved, and just so you guys know, this is only half of what I got planned. Alright, so grab a seat, watch out for Bakugo and Inosuke because it's time for my theory. Now, my reasoning behind this idea is centering around a few key facts that have been either mentioned in passing or through aesthetics shown to us over the years, and we're kind of meant to just, assume what it means. Now, in the beginning, when constructing this idea, my thoughts were, okay, if you're not dead, you can't be inside of the Singularity. Now, we know that logic is absolutely wrong. You can be alive and inside of the Singularity. Deku's existence within the Singularity is the first key indicator to that fact. But the biggest indicator is the fact that All For One and Shigaraki were able to enter it as well. Now, believe it or not, this tells us basic facts about All Might and his tenure as successor. For instance, when Gran Torino said the best thing that he had going for him was his body, he was absolutely correct. The only thing that made All Might relatively in the conversation was the fact that he had an insanely conditioned body, which allowed him to contain the power of One For All. Granted, now that we know that users can access past quirks because of Deku's proficiency, that instantly means that All Might was absolutely not able to access the Singularity. And in this case, there's two reasons why as to why All Might is a wavering visage inside of the Singularity. One, because he's bordering death, and two, he didn't have One For All for a sustained amount of time to accumulate inside of the Singularity, so that power has to build up over time for his visage to actually, manifest and appear. We can consider the Singularity as something that we kind of had a general understanding of, the Force. Now, when you think of One For All like the Force, upon death of a Jedi who is adept in usage of the Force, they can continue to live on inside of that Force Singularity. That essentially is the same type of concept with One For All. Now, with that being said, the second and third users of One For All are completely blacked out. Now, we haven't gotten enough exposition inside the background of One For All to even assume why they aren't appearing. But when Bakugo and All Might were sitting down discussing the Book of Quirks that was given to Deku, Bakugo commented on the fact that the fourth user's information was only half filled out, or rather it was redacted. His quirk and a few other things were just kind of left out, and All Might was rather quick to kind of dismiss Bakugo's attempts to really learn more about the fourth user. This little conversation kind of led me down a wormhole of non-stop thinking about the fourth user of One For All. I constantly stare at this particular scene right here where you have all of the users handing off their quirk. When we stare and try to analyze this particular panel, we see that the common thread between all of these users is that they look like they're battle-worn people who are pretty close to the realm of death. Meanwhile, the fourth user is holding Banjo Daigoro's hand almost like he's praying. This led me down to the path to believing that you didn't have to be deceased in order to become one of the vestiges of One for All. All you have to do is embody the quirk, and then slowly your energy will build up inside of it and creates the vestige. Now, it's kind of morbid, but being alive is really only secondary. All it comes down to is how long you've had the quirk and how much of the power you've been able to unlock. Now, as for the fourth user's backstory, we don't know anything. Absolutely nothing. We are Jon Snow in this situation. All that we can pull from him is the small amount of mannerisms that we have, which is like 3 mannerisms, and one of them is a lineup. But if we were to sit here and just kind of break down the way that he looks, in the moment that he hands off One for All, I'd hate to say it, but aesthetically, he looks rather, say, villain-like. I mean, the markings on his face just give me the vibe of like a militant group. And when we see him in the lineup, the first takeaway that I took from this is that he's an absolute brick shithouse. And the second thing that I've noticed is that his attire kinda looks reminiscent to Nana's and Torino's look. Now, with that being said, my theory for this video, like I said before, is the fact that I believe the fourth user of One for All is still alive. Look, I know, this might come off as out there, but my reasoning behind this theory is in part because All Might is so apprehensive to even speak about him. He wrote down what he possibly could about all of the other users, but then he goes back and crosses out all the information about the fourth user? Besides the fact that this is withholding information from somebody who's definitely gonna need that information after All Might dies, we have to think about, why would he redact all of this guy's backstory? And yeah, All Might could definitely be hiding the fact that one of the past successors of One for All was a villain. Or it could be a possibility that All Might is trying to hide the identity of somebody who considers themselves a conscientious objector. Look, there is precedent for characters in My Hero Academia to be over 150 years old. I'm looking at you, Mr. Garaki. So, what if it's quite possible that the fourth user of One for All has a longevity quirk? I mean, if he did, that could be something that All Might wants to hide. I mean, the prospect of finding out that you have immortality could be kind of out there. And also, that immortality aspect could have been the thing that was keeping All Might alive. I mean, he was missing tons of organs, and for all we know, One for All could have been the catalyst that was just keeping him alive. Granted, I think that the big thing that he's trying to do is hide the fact that this dude was a villain, or rather he was a villain that switched sides. And if it turns out that the fourth successor was indeed a villain, that means there's an even bigger shadow of mystery surrounding the second and third users. I mean, this means at one point in time, One for All did in fact fall into the hands of evil. And you know, over time that new successor was brought on, and the main problem was that their star became corrupt with the concept of maybe something called salvation. I mean, imagine taking this dude who's just this huge hulking monster of a person who's just quiet. He accepts the quirk, he does his job, he does everything for the cause, but then eventually things just start adding up, and eventually this guy realizes he's on the wrong side. And now the reason why I'm saying this is because it really wasn't harped on, but in the beginning of My Hero Academia, like in the very beginning, I'm talking like first chapter, first episode kind of thing, Deku goes on to say that human civilization would be amongst the stars if quirks weren't a thing. So quirks did the opposite. They created a power struggle. People like All For One who obtained the ultimate power became the ultimate power. He took away the quirks from people that didn't want one and gave quirks to people that did want one. It could be said that for a substantial amount of time, this guy was the ruling power in Japan, and after his brother passed on One for All, it could be said that it fell into the wrong hands. Only for time to pass and the fourth to realize that the world he was living in was a construct created by the symbol of evil. And he himself had to go against the grain and find and reach out to this rebel known as Daigoro Banjo and give him the power to, bring back civilization. And look, either way, Deku is going to unlock the fourth user's quirk. That's just something that's gonna happen over the course of time. And All Might thinks he has time before Deku's quirks start all manifesting, but I have a feeling it's gonna be a fire sale. Yeah, you can choose which quirk you want to focus and bring out, but what if another quirk activates during this fight with Shigaraki because Deku feels a particular emotion? That's the thing about One for All. We could have a sudden moment where power explodes and a new quirk reveals itself. Not to mention, when All Might dies, there's no more connection to this power in the physical world. So unless the fourth user is still alive, and if he's alive, you have the one person who has the connection to the second and third users of One for All. And in every instance that the second and third users have appeared on screen, we've seen that only shadows of their vestiges appear. So either they're locked behind a paywall, or there could be a few reasons why their shadows are, hidden. I mean, yeah, I guess you could stage an argument that the quirk itself was too young to at the time sustain them inside of the Singularity, but that's way too far-fetched. I mean, the first user is inside, so what I think is more likely is that the two users are just choosing to stay hidden inside of One for All. And like I said, for all we know, they could quite possibly be villains that want to hide their identities and not help the heroes. There's a lot of reasoning that could just go into play, but the big circle that I'm drawing is that, this fourth user is definitely alive. He's the one successor that we haven't seen in a life or death situation when handing off the quirk. And we have clear evidence that quirks that provide longevity exist. So, if he's dead, no harm, no foul. But if he's alive, this opens up the story to an extensive backstory. Everyone would totally love if they just had one arc of My Hero Academia like they do in My Hero Academia Vigilantes, where it just focuses on an entirely different character other than Deku. And I'm not talking like a 4-chapter Kirishima arc, I'm talking like when Naruto decided to have an entire Shikamaru arc. That was arguably one of the best arcs in the entire series. And it wasn't even a story focusing around Naruto, he was off in the woods trying to figure out how to cut a leaf using chakra. Look, either way, after this arc is over, I'm ready for some One for All backstory. And if I'm right, holy shit. But if you agree with me and you think that it's possible that the fourth user is still alive, be sure to hit that like button. And if you have any further ideas, be sure to leave them in a comment down below. Also, a quick shout out to everyone for your support during my 24-hour stream this past weekend. We were able to raise over $1,000 for the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. So, thank you all for coming out and turning the stream into a massive success. Other than that though, I think it's time to shut down the bar for the very first time. Let's see how these new lights are working out. Nice.